Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome here. My name is Kylene. I have a 20-month-old son and a 1-month-old daughter, and today I wanted to share with you guys how I have successfully breastfed them. Clearly my newborn is a month old, so I haven't gotten too far with her yet, but I nursed my son for 13 months. I stopped nursing because I was 13 weeks pregnant with my daughter, and it was just getting to be a lot. But I wanted to just kind of share with you guys how to successfully breastfeed a baby with little to no pain. If you guys don't know my journey with my son, I went through pretty much everything when it comes to complications. I shared a video in that journey, so I will leave that link down below if you guys are curious. I've dealt with quite a bit of struggles with nursing, so I wanted to share how I got through them. Now, I just wanted to preface, I am not a lactation consultant. I am not an expert in breastfeeding. This is just my personal experience. If I were to come to you as a friend, as a sister, like, this is what I would say to you if I was trying to help you nurse your baby. So just take everything I say with a grain of salt. Of course, always ask your pediatrician or a lactation consultant if you're curious. But this is something that I wish I could have watched before having Rocky, because like I said, I had so many struggles, and I'm really hoping that I can help any of you prevent those from happening. So if this video is helpful to you, please share it, because I would love to help as many mamas as I can. But let's just jump into the video. So this one is going to be a long one because there's so many things that I can talk about. So I'm going to try my best to categorize each kind of topic, and then I will timestamp this, so in the video you can kind of scroll through and see like what you want to learn about. But I'm going to go through all those categories, and then at the end I am going to answer some questions that I had you guys ask me on Instagram. So that's kind of the layout of this video. Like I said, it's going to be a long one, so I hope that you guys enjoy. I hope you find it helpful. Okay, so the first like category I'm gonna just kind of explain is like a basic how-to, and it's also in hopes of preventing as much pain as possible. Now with my son, I was in pain nursing him every single feeding, at least for the first week, and then it was painful for the letdown for like the next week. So I had pain for about 2 weeks. With my daughter, I had not nearly as much intensity of pain, but within a week the pain was completely gone. So I'm not sure if that's because it was my second time doing it, or if because I followed these tips myself. But no matter what you do, it is gonna hurt just a little bit. I mean, you're having someone suck on your nipples. It's not something that's very normal, and so there's gonna be some sort of pain. But like I said, the second time around it subsided completely within a week. So that's my goal for you for sure. But the first thing is, when you are in the hospital, ask for a lactation consultant. You're supposed to nurse your baby within an hour of them being born, and if you have no idea what you're doing, ask for help. The nurses can help you, but with Rocky, I asked a nurse and she was like, oh yeah, looks good, and it wasn't a good latch, and I got pain like right away. And so I went and asked for a lactation consultant, and it was almost like too late because I already kind of had nipples that were irritated from the first couple feedings before I was able to see the lactation consultant. So I highly recommend you ask for help right away. It's always nice to have someone else kind of help guiding you with what you're doing. And then as far as like latching goes, there's a few kind of tips. So first tip, let's get your baby set up correctly. So I have my son's like little doll here to show you guys a good example. But the first thing is you want the baby's belly button and your belly button matching up. So you don't want your baby on its back like with the neck turned. You want their body completely turned to you. There's some videos on the Taking Care of Babies that talks about this, and she uses like a Subway sandwich example. But imagine eating something with your body like this. Like, it's just not natural. So you are always facing your food. Let's have your baby face the food as well. Another thing is you want your baby's full mouth to be over your entire breast, not just the nipple. I always remember that it's not called nipple feeding, it's called breastfeeding. If they're just sucking on your nipple, it's gonna hurt really, really bad. So you want to get their mouth fully open. A good way to do this is to take their mouth and run your nipple on the nose, and then like pulling it down and then in. I know that's like the weirdest thing. This is such a weird thing to explain. But as you take your nipple and pull it down the nose, they'll smell the milk, so it'll kind of have them open, and then you can kind of like shove the whole boob in the mouth. The other thing with this is you want their chin to be down, because that opens their mouth more. If their chin is up, you can imagine as I'm doing this, my mouth kind of like shortens. So you want their chin down so you can kind of just like position their head down into you. But that will get a good latch, having their mouth like super open like that. Another thing you want to check as they are latched is their lips. If their lips are kind of like tucked in, that's not going to be a good latch. That's going to hurt your nipples too. You want both of their lips to like go out. I feel so weird explaining this, but You want their lips out. If it is not out, you're gonna wanna unlatch your baby. This can be painful at the beginning, but the way that you wanna do it is you don't wanna just like rip your nipple off or rip them off. You wanna go in and break the latch. So you use your pinky and you just kind of shove it in there and find like their tongue and release it from your nipple. You just kind of like turn, it'll pop, and then you can release without being in pain. Okay, I hope that made sense of like how to latch your baby. The other thing I suggest early on within like the first few days is checking for a lip or a tongue tie. I asked about it and it was kind of dismissed. If you think your baby has one, you definitely should ask for a second, third, fourth recommendation. Rocky has a lip tie. He still has it. I can now notice it pretty well because there's a gap in between his teeth. But this causes so many struggles when it comes to feeding, nursing wise, even bottle feeding, but also it'll affect their solid journey too with eating solids. And so I would definitely make sure someone looks over that. If you feel like you're not being heard, then I would definitely look for like a specialist. But this is something for sure I wish I would have known with Rocky's to check that. If you guys don't know what the tie is, basically it's like a piece of skin that like connects from their lip to their teeth or on their tongue. It's like a thin like piece of skin that is like underneath their tongue that like goes out farther than it's supposed to. You can always Google things that I am saying if you don't understand what it is, like for a picture, but that's what like a lip or tongue tie are. As far as positions go, when I was nursing Rocky, so this was me nursing for the first time, I did the cross cradle. A normal cradle is like what you would picture anyone nursing a baby. They're in the left arm, left boob. Cross cradle is right arm, left boob, so that way you can hold your boob and kind of like control both your baby and the boob. If you're doing this, you don't want to put the finger like on the back of their head. You just want to kind of hold right here. Imagine someone like pushing on there. Your instinct is to like go back, and your baby will do that. So you kind of just want your hand like around their face, and then your hand you want to hold in like a C position. This is where Kara's Subway sandwich like analogy comes in. There's a lot of photos where people like take their nipple and kind of go like that. She always uses the example, like imagine eating a sandwich. You're not going to hold it like that. Like you hold it like this and bring it to your mouth. So you want to do that with your boob as well. That kind of gives you like more control of what's going on, and that way you're not just holding the nipple again and like encouraging them to just nipple feed. You've got your whole like boob in your hand. This is all kind of like hard to explain because it's all happening like simultaneously, but this is all just like in getting your baby to latch. The other thing is I always feel like I need to like sit up straight. If I'm like slouched back or something, it's like really kind of hard to get baby in the right position. So I would say sit up against like a headboard, sit up against the back of a couch. If you're freshly postpartum and you're kind of hurting and you have your belly like still in your way, use pillows. Like I remember I stacked up pillows behind me to like make the back of the couch closer to the edge, so that way I could sit like on the edge of the couch, and I would put pillows on the sides of me too. You can use a nursing pillow, but I found with Rocky at the beginning, my belly kind of got in the way, so I just kind of like stacked up pillows, so that way I wasn't like holding him up the whole time. But yeah, you want to sit up straight and just kind of get yourself in a good position. And then you want to bring your baby to you, not you to your baby. I remember for a while too, I was like kind of like leaning over and trying to like shove my boob in like his mouth. Whereas like if you just kind of bring your baby to you and you relax a little bit, that helps a ton. Your baby can sense your energy really with anything you do, but especially when you're nursing, if you're like stressed and anxious and you're just kind of like tense and like angry, your baby's definitely gonna feel that too, and it's gonna be harder and your baby will be more tense. You want your baby to kind of like curl into you and not just be like arching away. So just really watch your energy, and if you're comfortable, that will help a ton. And then the other tip is to not swaddle your baby while you're feeding them. That can be something people do because if they fall asleep, then you don't have to like wake them up to like swaddle them. It's really awkward if you were to eat with your arms down and this like tight little ball. It's gonna be hard. Again, your baby's gonna be like this. You can take the swaddle off. You can even get them down to just like their diaper. It's skin to skin for both of you, and babies really like that too. So those are all my tips of like getting the baby latched and like trying to do it in a way that doesn't create pain on your nipple. We're gonna move to the next category, which is like how to further help prevent cracked nipples. So honestly, I feel like it's kind of inevitable the first time around that you're gonna have like nipple pain, but it doesn't mean that they have to be like cracked and bleeding. This time with Echo, I didn't experience any of that, but I did experience it with Rocky, and it's because I didn't do these steps right away. And so for the first like 5 or 6 days, I wasn't doing this, and it really messed up my nipples. So my first tip is to get a sort of nipple cream. I just used like the Lancino one, but use it every single time you nurse on both sides. As soon as you're done, put the nipple cream on and let it help heal. You can also apply your milk at that stage. You're gonna be making colostrum, which has a lot of antibodies, which can help heal. Yeah, apply that on there too. That'll help as well. And that kind of brings me to my next tip is if you use a haka, as the haka fills up and you're kind of like leaning back a little bit, it'll fill up the entire container, which will eventually submerge your nipple in breast milk. And that is extremely healing. I swear that is what helped me heal my nipples with Rocky. And then it helped prevent me having cracked nipples with Echo. Moving on, I want to talk about all the different positions you can nurse a baby in, because I just shared cross cradle and cradle, but if you're having a hard time with your baby latching, you may want to try a different position. They just went through a birthing canal, their necks can be like super tense and messed up, and so maybe they're not really comfortable a certain way, so you just want to learn to like switch it up if that's the case. So with Echo, I went straight to cradle feeding because I really felt confident. Sometimes too, as I'm doing this, I will take my hand and kind of like move my boob this way, but that's how I feed her. But like I said, I started with Rocky with cross cradle, which is the opposite arm, the hand kind of here to help. The next one is football hold, which is you're nursing with the baby kind of behind you. This one I find kind of a little bit more difficult because you're kind of having to like hold up your baby, but again, you can take a pillow, kind of prop them up and get them here. If they're preferring one side, that's typically when you would try that, is to try like tricking them, because if they always want to be in this position, they're still in this position right here. So that's kind of why you would use that one. The next one is laying down, which I never did this with Rocky. I've done it a few times with Echo, but for me, I always have a hard time like getting into the position. But what worked for me with Echo was getting her latched while I was sitting up and then laying down on my side, and like that way her mouth is like where my nipple would be in a boob. So basically with this one, all you do is literally lay down and you feed your baby. It's actually really relaxing and comforting, but I seriously like never nurse that way. I don't know, I would prefer to be like sitting up. But the last one is a dangle feed, which this saved me with Rocky. When he was about 10 months old, his teeth were coming in and he wasn't biting me, but the friction of his teeth were cutting into me and I legit had a hole in my nipple. It hurt so bad. And so that hole developed a certain way from me feeding him like this. And so when I dangle fed, his latch was in a different position where his teeth would line up, and so it wouldn't dig into the cut that I already had. And so that made me be able to nurse pain-free, whereas if I was holding him the normal way, I was legit in tears, like bawling feeding him because it hurt so freaking bad. So changing positions can help a ton. I'm going to talk about mastitis later, but I hear that that helps with that too. So yeah, definitely try and get comfortable with doing all the different types of positions. Okay, the next category is for all my girls who have strong letdown, because I do. I literally spray as my letdown comes and it's intense. It chokes my babies, it makes them very frustrated. It led to a ton of throwing up with Rocky. And so I'm kind of just trying to share like how I got through it. Parts of it is just kind of inevitable, that you're just going to deal with some of it. But my biggest tip for one is to use the haka, because that's going to catch your letdown on the opposite side. So as you're worrying about the one side, you're not like spraying all over the baby. That will also take away some of the milk so that when you switch the baby, it's not as intense when they feed on that side. So at least it's only one side that you're kind of dealing with that's really strong. And as I just kind of clarified, but I will re-clarify, I do feed on both sides each time. I did not with Rocky for the first like month because I couldn't imagine re-latching. That pain was so incredible that I would only feed on one side and just use the haka on the other, because I just didn't want to relatch. But with Echo, I've always haka'd one side, fed on this side, taken the haka off as soon as my letdown was done. I can tell it wasn't filling the haka anymore, and then I would switch and still feed on that side. My other tip is to have a towel near. I always nurse with a towel. If I'm not using the haka, I just kind of shove it in my boobs so that way, like if I leak, it doesn't get all over me. But the other side of the towel I used, and I put it like in between Echo's shoulder and her face, so that way as she feeds, one, if it drips, it gets on that, but two, I can kind of just take the towel and like cover my nipple as she pops off. Or if she's kind of struggling, I will just pop her off and let it kind of drain into the towel a little bit, because that will just make it so it's not squirting and she's not choking. So sometimes you just kind of have to let some of the milk go. Just imagine a drink like spraying into your mouth and like you trying to like gulp and gulp and gulp. Like sometimes you just gotta let like all of that pass and then you can feed them. I do find that that helps quite a bit, but like I said, some of the struggles of nursing and breastfeeding are just inevitable and they can lead to throwing up. Luckily, Echo doesn't throw up as much as Rocky did, but she still does here and there. And I'm not really doing anything different for the two of them. It's just kind of how their bodies are responding. And then I just wanted to cover this for when you're on the go, if you don't want to leak and you do want to still store some of that milk that you are spraying out, to use the Ladybug Haka. Those fit into your bra. They're super discreet. They'll catch the milk and then they'll also help relieve your boob from some of the letdown. The next category is all about like freezer stash, pumping, that kind of thing. The only pump I have really used for either of my kids is the Haka. It's not actually like a pump that's like continuously going. It's just like a hands-free silicone. I should have brought it, but it's downstairs. I did have a pump for when I would shoot weddings and I would miss a feeding, and I used a hand pump, but I've literally not pumped at all having Echo, and she is 7.5 weeks old. I just prefer not to do it. I feel like if I'm gonna nurse, I just want to nurse. If I have to pump and nurse, it's like a double time full-time job, and I just cannot. I always say people who pump are incredible and superheroes because you are literally doing double the work. And I'm just so thankful that I work from home and I'm with my babies all the time and I don't have to go back to work. So if you are one of those people, unfortunately this video is probably not going to be super helpful in that sense, but I would just imagine you would just replace your feeding with pumping and then store the milk until you get home. But I have been able to build a freezer supply just using the Haka for just the letdown. So as I latch Echo on this side, I kind of have her angled up like this so that way the Haka can sit above her. This really helps prevent her kicking it off and it spilling all over us. But as my letdown will happen, it'll fill up the Haka on this side and then I will take it off and then I will switch and I'll still feed her. So she still gets to eat on both sides, but I also will store about 2 to 4 ounces depending on how much milk I have in my boob each time that I nurse Echo. So for the first like 1 to 2 months, I use the Haka with every single feeding. If I am at home, if I'm out and about, I won't because I just don't really like to bring it. I'll just use the Ladybug, which doesn't get as much, doesn't have as strong of a suction, but it will still get something. After that, like right about now, Echo, like I said, is 7.5 weeks old. I really only use my Haka here and there if I feel engorged, or I will use it the first feeding of the day because it's the longest stretch she'll go. And that's just personal preference. I don't want to have to always use it. I just want to be able to nurse her and not worry about it much. And I also already have quite a bit of milk in the freezer, so I feel like my supply is good. And then I also just wanted to state the rule of thumb for like storing milk. I use a 6-6-6 rule. 6 hours it can be at room temp, just like on the counter. 6 days it can be in the fridge, and then 6 months it can be in the freezer. I know if you get a deep freezer it can last even longer, but I don't really have the space for that, nor do I want to buy a deep freezer, so that's kind of just what I follow. But if you guys want like information on how to store milk any like deeper, I'm sure you can Google it or just like kind of look it up. But I just put it all in the fridge and then I combine it. I store in 4-ounce bags for like the first little bit, and then I'll move on to 6-ounce bags like maybe a month or 2 in, because eventually when they would use that milk, they'll have a bigger bottle. And then like a few months later do 8 ounces just to like space out how big the bottles are once they get older. But right now I've just been doing 4 ounces, and then within the next like couple weeks I'll probably switch to 6. All right, next category is supply and how to keep it up. And I don't have a ton of information for this because what I have done has worked so well for me. And it's crazy because I feel like it's common sense, and I'm not saying this like to be rude at all, but when I talk to people about this, most times they're like, oh yeah, I don't do that, or oh, I need to be better about that. But the biggest thing to keep your supply up, or at least that has helped me, or really it's the only thing I've done, is making sure I am eating and drinking enough. Every single time I nurse Echo, I will make sure I've at least had a snack in between the next time I nurse her. I drink as much water as possible. If you just think about it, 1, you burn 500 calories a day nursing a baby, so you need to eat enough for you plus 500 calories. And then as far as water goes, we need at least half our body weight in ounces for water, and then imagine how many times you're nursing a baby and how much ounces come out of that. You need to at least replenish that too. So honestly, I would just shoot for a gallon a day of water. Like, you just need a ton of water. That's always my first thing. If I notice my supply is going down, I'm like, I probably haven't drank enough water today, probably haven't eaten. And usually I would say like 9.5 times out of 10, that'll do it. When I got sick, I couldn't really eat anything and I was really stressed about my supply. All I did was drink Body Armor drinks, and that helped a ton too. But there's other foods too. I know like oatmeal is good. I know you can get like lactation cookies, like things like that, but I personally just don't feel like those are necessary. I truly just feel like if you just eat enough and drink enough, you'll be good. I feel like as far as supply goes, I don't really struggle in that area. So if I'm sounding very inconsiderate or naive to this subject, please comment other ways that you've gotten your supply up if those two things you have done religiously and they don't work. Like I said, that has always been what has worked for me. I also wanted to say too that your body is kind of on a supply and demand when it comes to milk, and so your baby is kind of regulating how much milk that they need or want. Yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna leave that one tip because I feel like I said, I thought it was more known, but when I talk to people every single time, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not doing great with that. So if you guys have any other tips of getting your milk supply up, leave them down below. Help all the other people watching this video out, because like I said, that is the only thing that has ever been the problem for me, and I've fixed it and it's fixed my supply. All right, next category is nursing strikes, which I'm currently kind of going through one. I went through it hard with Rocky. When he was 2 months old, he, for 5 days straight, striked every single session. It took me 40+ minutes to get him to latch. That was hell. The other day that happened to me once out of the day with Echo, and she kind of strikes my right side a little bit. But the biggest thing is you just kind of have to work through it and stay patient. It is so incredibly hard, and it's so easy to just be like, screw it, I'm giving him a bottle. But if you're just as stubborn, they will eventually just give in to you. Not to say that I would go hours without feeding my baby if they were striking. Of course I would eventually give a bottle, but be patient. And then back to the whole they're sensing your energy. Be really cautious of if you're getting mad, it's gonna make them mad too. If you need someone to take your baby for a second so that way you can calm down, I highly recommend that. I always have Nathaniel do that if I feel like I just can't calm down. Another trick is a boob to bottle trick. So I'm just gonna act like I have a bottle in my hand, okay? So say the baby is striking me and I have a bottle. I will put the bottle in their mouth. As they start sucking, I will let go of the bottle and then a latch here. And then if they get mad and they want the bottle again, I'll do the bottle again and then try and latch here. And I go back and forth doing that until eventually they take me over the bottle. This happened with me as well when my son striked the bottle and not me. I would eventually shove the bottle in and try and get him to take the bottle, and it eventually worked too. So that's a trick you can do too. Yesterday I did that with a binky to try and get her to latch to me, and it worked as well. But I also just wanted to say, if you're going through a strike, I'm so sorry, it is so freaking hard. And if you have to give them a bottle, it's totally fine. If you're like me and that stresses you out, just keep trying. Yesterday when that whole strike happened with Echo, I ended up just giving her a second. It took 40 minutes, she still didn't latch, and so about at an hour mark from when I was supposed to feed her, she was getting extremely fussy, and so I tried again and she latched on. Sometimes maybe they're just not hungry at that point, and that kind of just did it for me. But like I said, patience is a huge thing with strike. As this video is so long, I feel the need to speak really fast because it is so long and I still have so many categories. But the next category is mastitis. I have thankfully never gotten mastitis in the 13 months I fed Rocky and the almost 2 months I fed Echo. I swear by not having tight clothes on. My friend had mastitis so many times and she figured this out the 8th or 9th time that she had it, and so that was the first thing she told me. But tight clothes and underwire bras or tight sports bras can really cause a clogged duct. So I would recommend not wearing anything tight. The nursing bra I'm wearing right now is from Target, and it's literally a seamless bra. I love it so much. It is so nice, so I will leave that linked for you guys if you want to try that out. I did some research on this because I personally have not experienced it, so I wanted to try and give you guys some tips. But I've heard too that pumping too much can cause this, and so that's kind of why I don't pump. Also, I'm lazy and I don't want to pump, but I also don't want to create more of a supply than my baby is demanding, if that makes sense. So if you start pumping, you kind of have to keep pumping because your body's going to keep producing that milk. Another thing is to make sure you get full feedings. Not fully draining your boob will cause there to be too much milk again, and then it can clog the duct and create mastitis. So if your baby's done feeding from you and you don't feel like you fully drained it, I would pump, but I would slowly pump a little bit less each time to make the demand go down, if that makes sense. Using the Hawkeye can always help too. If they're only drinking from one side, you can at least take the letdown out of the other side. I briefly mentioned this before, but changing positions can help too, because if they're always feeding in a certain position, it may not be draining all parts of your boob. So if you switch, then they can kind of drain from the other way too. So try that as well. And then someone asked too, how I don't get super engorged throughout the night, because Echo is now going 10 and a half hours of sleep at night. And this is by slowly increasing the amount of time she goes without a feeding throughout the night. So she didn't just do a 4-hour stretch and then a 10-hour stretch. She's like been slowly working her way up that way. With Rocky, I really was huge about waking him up every 3 hours until he was 4 weeks old. And then I went as many hours as he was weeks. So I would go 4 hours at 4 weeks, 5 hours at 5 weeks, so and so on. With Echo, I kind of just have let her wake me up, and she slowly just kind of progressed on her own. But that's why I don't like wake up super engorged. All right, the next one is for all you mamas who are not first-time mamas and you have another kid in the picture, and it's how to entertain a toddler while you are nursing a baby. There's many different things you can do. Some of them may work for your kid, some may not. At the beginning, I would turn on TV because it was super easy, but I quickly learned that he was having way more tantrums doing that, so I don't do that anymore. What I do now is I try and time it out to when he would eat a meal or a snack, and I have him sit in the high chair while I feed Echo. I make sure everything is set up. I have his water, I have backup food, like I just am fully prepared so I don't have to get up while feeding him. But if that's not the case for you, then I would try a basket of toys. I try and interact with Rocky while I'm feeding Echo, and so I'll have him take like a basket of trucks and I'll have him like drive them up my leg or on my arm or just like different things, so that way he can see that I'm like tending to him too. You could also try just doing a new basket of toys each day. It could literally just be like random things throughout your house, like a makeup brush, a kitchen utensil, just different things he doesn't normally play with, so it's exciting. You could also get your baby involved in the feeding. Like I have Rocky help me burp her. I have him sit by her and just like kiss her head and just like kind of talk to me and be close to me too, and that really helps him as well. But sometimes it's complete chaos, and that is just what life is. You can't always be super perfect and easy, but hopefully some of those things will help you. Okay, last thing we're gonna do is move through a bunch of questions that I don't think I answered, so I'm just gonna read them off of my phone and kind of rapid fire at you guys. So first question was, do you pump after if they don't fully drain a boob? And I kind of explained that. And I personally don't pump, but if I'm worried about being too engorged and I can feel I'm super engorged, then I would just kind of pump it slowly down or just use a Haka. This didn't really happen to me yet because I've always used the Haka until more recently within the last like week or so. So I feel like my body has regulated. So if you don't want to pump, I highly recommend getting a Haka, so you at least are getting that drainage on the other side if they don't want to feed on both sides. And then I think I addressed this too, but someone asked if I pumped at all, and I personally don't. I just don't want to, and I feel like it's a supply and demand thing, so I don't want to add more milk than what Echo needs. So personally, I do not. I also have the luxury of not having to leave my babies, but if I were to go leave them and miss a feeding, then I would pump in replace of the feeding. Another person asked if I use the Haka when I'm not at home, and I use the Ladybug when I'm not at home, or I shove a towel in there so that way I don't leak all over myself, or I leak all over myself and it's not fun. Next question was, how do you introduce a bottle? And honestly, I just gave it to her and I had her try. The first few times she was kind of like licking it and like pushing it out, and I just kept kind of putting it back in, and she eventually sucked. We use the man bottles, which I hear are very similar to a nipple, so I would try that first, but if that doesn't work, just keep trying different bottles until it works. I highly recommend introducing a bottle within the first month, because I didn't with Rocky. I did around that 2 month when he striked me, but then he only wanted the bottle. And so then I didn't give a bottle again because I was afraid of him not wanting to nurse for me. And then when I went back to work for weddings, he wouldn't take a bottle, and it was just chaos. And pretty much the entire time he wouldn't take a bottle. So if you want to ever leave your baby more than 3 hours, I highly recommend introducing a bottle within the first month or so. The next question is something I'm still working on, but it was, how do you feed in public comfortably? And honestly, it's hard, but something that's super helpful is wearing something that you feel comfortable in nursing. For me, the easiest thing to nurse in public is like a baggy shirt. So if you're wearing like a graphic tee and biker shorts, because you can just like pull it up and just kind of use your shirt to like cover your body. But if that's not the case, you can use a nursing cover or a blanket. Nursing covers are kind of hard for me because I feel like I've got to shove the baby in there and then I can't see. So then I like pull it over my head and I'm just like, what's going on? And so you could also just use a blanket and like drape it over you. But the more you do it, the better you're gonna feel. I had to do it quite a bit when we went to California when Echo was like 4 weeks old, and so that has made me super comfortable. But I also just don't care as much anymore because I have Rocky and I kind of just have to do it sometimes. But I would say the more you do it, the better you're gonna feel, and it'll get easier. You'll care less. I also try and pick a spot like in public where at least one side of me is kind of blocked off. So like if I'm at a restaurant, I'll try and find the corner with a booth. So like I only have to worry about this side if I'm like sitting in a booth right here. And I kind of just like turn my body away from people too. I feel like if you're sitting and everyone can see this way, but there's like a bench behind you, like you can totally turn into the bench, get them latched, and then bring it forward. That always helps me feel better as I'm like trying to latch my baby. Next question was, how do I plan outings around a nursing schedule? And I try my best to feed Echo before we leave certain places. If I know that's not going to work out, I won't leave anywhere too far if I don't want to nurse in public, especially if I have Rocky with me too. Nursing by myself with Rocky and Echo is super hard. Sometimes though, I will do it and I'll just nurse in the car, and I've had to do this where I just keep Rocky buckled in. I'll turn on music, I'll try and talk with him as I nurse, and sometimes he cries and it's just chaotic, but I try my best to always just feed right before we go, so that way I don't have to feed until I get home too. But again, the more you do it, the more you won't care to nurse in public, and it'll just kind of be like, oh, they gotta feed again, we'll feed them. Someone asked, what do you do before your milk comes in? And I just wanted to kind of clarify, because I feel like this is someone who hasn't had their baby yet. But for the first few days, you just have colostrum, and that's all your baby needs. Until your milk comes in, they're content on that. It's just kind of like the progression of your milk with your body. For me, my milk didn't come in until like day 5 or 6 with Echo, and it came in on like day 3 with Rocky. I just kind of did what my body did, and I just kind of trust my body that it knows what it's doing, and I didn't do anything extra. I remember seeing a question too, if I did anything before I had the baby to like prep myself, and I didn't. So I just kind of went with it and made sure, again, I was eating enough and drinking enough, but that was more so for my pregnancy, not necessarily nursing. And it all just kind of worked out super well. Someone asked, how do you get through the painful part of nursing? And she had mentioned that like her friends have always talked about how hard it is and they just like gave up, and she was asking like how to not give up. And honestly, I'm just really freaking stubborn. I feel like I really want to nurse my babies. In my head, I've always told myself I'm gonna make it at least a year, and I'm not gonna give up. I feel like the only way I got through it was knowing that it was temporary, and I took it feed by feed. With Rocky, I was so distraught over the whole experience. I remember just saying like, if I could just make it to 6 weeks, like I'll be so proud of myself. And I just took it day by day, feed by feed, and eventually I got there, and eventually it got easier. For the pain, I really don't think it'll last more than 2 weeks. If you use a lot of these tips, I'm hoping that will even be less, but if you can just kind of count those days down and get through it, just get through it. You just gotta survive. Next question was, do you worry your babies are not getting enough? And yes, I totally do, because my babies nurse super fast. They only nurse about 3 to 5 minutes on each side. Now, the first like month, it would take like 20 minutes on each side, but pretty quickly, they feed pretty quickly. It stresses me out all the time, but each time I go to the doctor's office, my babies are at a good weight. They're growing at a steady rate. And so now if they don't feed, I'm just like, well, I know they're feeding super well. I will still try, because I don't want to be reliant on the fact that they were healthy and then be like, oh, they're fine, and then them not be healthy. But kind of just go off your baby's cues, and if they seem full and content and they're not crying and you're shoving their nipple in their mouth and they're just cooing at you, like that's literally what Echo does to me, she just like smiles and coos, then they're fine, they're content, they're not upset, they're probably good. Someone asked, how often do you nurse when introducing solids? I never changed my nursing schedule when introducing solids. The solids were always extra, and the nursing was the main thing. Until your baby is a year old, breast milk or formula is the main source of nutrition, and the food is just kind of extra. So I never changed how often I nurse. I nurse about 5 times a day, and then it's always the night feedings that would change. Right now I only nurse about once, maybe not even at all at night. So I would still just feed 5 times a day and then kind of add food around the 5 times. All right, last question is about the binky, and when did we introduce it, and were we worried about like nipple confusion? We give binkies day 1 in the hospital. If you guys don't know, Rocky's a binky baby. He's obsessed with his binkies, and I'm personally not worried about it. My sister, I feel like I sound like a broken record, I say this all the time, but my sister's a dentist, and she has expressed no concern to me about them having binkies, and so it really helps me. It saves me from cluster feeding. It saves my nipples from being extremely raw, especially in the first couple weeks. And so I want my babies to take a binky. It's very helpful to help soothe them, and it not be me who has to soothe them every single time. So we just do it right away. I've never had any trouble with nipple confusion. It's always been good. So I'm gonna stop talking. I think I literally have been talking for like an hour. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. If you have any other questions, leave them down below and I will answer them in the comments, just so that way this video can either have all answers questioned with me talking or in the comments, because I just want this to be a hub for you guys to come so that you can successfully nurse your baby and feel good about it. Again, if this was helpful to you, please share it with people so that way it can be helpful to other people as well. But I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.